These are the features that I was looking for in the project itself. I'll go through them one by one, but I did look to see how many errors there were or how many warnings there had been in the project. I looked to see if you had linked Revit files, the shell, the DWG files, and the DWG files were attached by level so that they were only visible when you're looking at a 2D view. I looked to check that your levels were set to 13 feet 4, which was the same as the floor to floor height for the shell. I checked to see if you had walls that were 9 feet high and an example of a curved wall and a curved curtain wall. I looked to see that you had floor materials that also, in addition to the material itself, be it carpet or concrete slab, 2 inches deep with the image file that we created, that you had cut it out and then you could put another floor inside it. Not, I wasn't looking for, say, a carpet on top of an existing material, but actually cutting out an existing one and substituting a different material. So they're both at the same height, but both different materials. I looked for painted walls with a split face. I looked at the doors. I looked at decals, either your images provided or the images I had provided. It's on curved walls, on flat walls. I looked at rooms. I looked to see if there was a room schedule called something like check rooms, because rooms were kind of a special case that when you delete them from a view, they have not gone from the actual project, but you can delete them from the schedule to remove them from the entire project. And it gives you a way of getting feedback. So, for example, you might see something that says duplicate room, where you've got a room on top of a room, and you can delete them in that schedule. And if need be, you could delete all of them and then place the rooms one by one so that the numbers are in the sequence that you want. Ceilings, I looked at to have them at the same height. I don't really care what the height was, 8.6, 8.9. The walls I had said were 9 feet. I looked for a ceiling that had an upstand, so it had a wall that began at, say, 8 feet 9 and then went above, just above the ceiling. All of the walls were unconstrained, so they were dimensions from uh, the bottom of level 1 to the height of the wall from level 1, not using levels to, say, attach it to level 2, but having everything built off of a level and giving it the actual height the wall is going to be in a project. I looked for a sloped ceiling with that between conference rooms, and that was using the slope arrow to give it an angle. I looked for light groups. Now, light groups, we'd placed lights on a ceiling. There was a little confusion because you can make a group, which, for example, would be all of the furniture that's in a specific room, like uh, a standard office or all those standard offices being of the same size, and instead of placing them as individual pieces of furniture, you could make a group and you could place that same group in other rooms of the same size. The benefit being that you're populating your entire model, and if you edit a group to add something or to take something away or to turn a chair or something like that, all of them update in your project. But a light group is different from a normal group, like the group furniture here. The light group is actually a way of saying, give me some control over whether lights are included in the lighting calculations. And so I kind of show how it's done, but the confusion was that some people selected all the lights and then clicked the GP group command, and then gave them a name, so that all of these lights, if your room were the exact same size, you might do that to copy lights from one room to another, but light group was different. It's about giving you the option to assign an individual light to a named container, which is usually the name of the room, so that you can turn individual lights on and off, or you can dim the lights. So there was a bit of confusion there. Stairs and railings were, some of these are advanced topics. So stairs and railings, we just wanted something that went from level 1 to level 2, and we wanted some railings around any of the openings between level 1 and level 2. The browser cleanup, when I'd said name the views, I really meant the generic views. So when you create a section or an interior elevation or something, you want to name it either the way it's going to look on the sheets. But for the kind of working views that you're creating, like the cameras, what I had intended was that you put your initials on it, because if you're working with other people simultaneously in the project, you want to let other people know that they shouldn't delete it. Your initials is kind of like saying, I own this, please leave it alone. I didn't really mean put in your initials in front of the views that are going onto the sheet. So things like the level 2 construction document, level 1 construction document is fine, but I didn't need I wouldn't be putting like JC Office or JC internal elevations. But I didn't take off points for the fact that some of the views had the initials added unnecessarily. I just wanted to see that you understood that if you weren't going to use, you didn't need, for example, to have a site plan, and you could delete it, clean up the browser. You didn't need a roof plan, so remove it from the browser. That rendering was the different types of render, having a file and putting it onto the sheet, or just viewing a view with realistic settings, or rendering something and bringing it in, and then having an image that you then put on a sheet. A render non-perspective was to show you, because you cannot render a plan or a section in Revit if it's an orthogonal view. It's not a 3D view, and only 3D views can be rendered, where you'll see things like reflection in the glass and light bounce from the one surface to another. So the idea of creating a camera view that doesn't have the perspective button checked let you do that if you wanted to do it and bring it into a project. The actual groups that were ways of populating the model quickly, not managing the lights, but populating furniture. I looked to see if you had any of that for furniture, for casework. Design options, where you had created at least one topic and then included an option called blank, so that you could be looking at the main model but not showing anything that was in the design options. That's also typically an advanced topic, but it was to make you aware of the fact that you could do that. Cutaways, where you're using the section box to look at the model. These were like the 4 different kind of views, an enlarged area, so you could do like a rectangular area and create another, say, a room at a larger size, and you could also do a wall section, and you could do interior elevations and assign some points for that. Scope boxes were to control the size of the view, really like a viewpoint in AutoCAD. And there was only 2. There was one for the project, and there was one for a palette if you wanted to create a palette. Because at the end of the day, you could save your project, you could save it as a template, and then you could delete the actual model elements themselves, but leave the palette, so that next time you create a project, you could use your interiors template and have all of the walls, doors, windows, furniture, whatever, lighting, And you could have that instead of searching for it, you'd have it from the palette. You could put the two views side by side and you could say, create similar and pop them into the model. That's something I've done for multiple firms. When you're doing that, phases, this again is an advanced topic, but it's only to show you that it's a possibility. Phases, if you typically get an existing and a new construction phase. We made a pre-construction phase, and that was so we could put things that were in the palette into that phase, so that when you run schedules, you don't get these included in the quantities of walls or doors or flooring, any of that stuff. But I'm not assigning a lot of points for it. It's an advanced topic, and I just wanted to be sure you understood it. The browser, the fact that you can have working views and construction document views. I know it's an introductory class, but if you land in an office that's doing larger interior projects, nobody there works in a single file. You are potentially working in the same model with multiple other people. So the idea is that you have a view that is a working view, which is, we just called them level 1, level 2, but you also have construction document views that are the ones that are going to go on a sheet. And in an office, whatever goes on that view might actually be assigned to one person, that you own that sheet and you are responsible for putting in dimensions and tags. Things that we did, like showing the rooms color coded. So it's, although we're doing an introductory class, the way that typically most people work in Revit is with working views for simply modeling and construction document views that are tagged in some way. We just used CD to indicate it was a construction. The PDF was submitted. So that was making a sheet and sheet set and customizing the title block and dropping files in. And then I put a little bit in here that was kind of above and beyond. If you're doing in anything you do, if you do a bit more than what is required, there should be some kind of benefit for it. So only 5 points were assigned for doing that. So for each of these items, you can see I assigned what I thought were the points that could be awarded, which gives me a total of 100% if everybody got everything in here. And then for each student, I had the option to come in and kind of plug in whatever value you get for completing the exercise or not. And then this would total up for me. And then I used that to assign the value for the grade itself. So for example, this is not a good example here, but suppose I took that and popped it in there. Oh, sorry, that's not how I would do it. Suppose I take the value that's there, so it was like 7, and I'll just put in that was your value. Then this is that's a formula that is this is a quarter of your total, this is a quarter of your total, and this is half of your total. So that's the formula there to show what the final grade would be. So let me run through it and I'll try and show you what it should look like. So this is just to show what some of the features were under the Manage tab and under Inquiry. Revit is providing feedback if it thinks that there's a problem with what you're doing while you model. So for example, this like highlighted floors in the model, highlighted floors overlap. It'll show me here, and I can actually like pick this and I can say, show me where this is. and it will point to something where it's got something that overlaps, and it thinks that that's a problem. I didn't deduct any points for this, but I did kind of show it early on because in a large project, if you have more than, say, 800 warnings like this, they start to slow the loading of a project down. So I had 3 points assigned for warnings, and nobody lost points because of the number of warnings in the project. The second thing was to go to, say, the manage links, and this was just to see that you had attached the DWG files that were meant to help model the building quickly. Often you get a case where it's an existing building, but it's all 2D and needs to be done in Revit. So there was a level 1, level 2 drawing, and then there was the level 1, level 2 showing what the numbers and color of the rooms should be. So these would be specific to your images that you brought in for rendering, but it means that if I get your file, I can attach my files up here and swap them out very quickly to see the model. So I did have an alternative shell. I also had a landscape, but just checking that you had it, and typically most people had it and got the 4 points. The interior levels, so I looked at the model and I just kind of confirmed that where, if I go to levels in here and I was displaying them, because the shell had the floor height set at 13 feet 4, I wanted to make sure that the levels inside the interior were also set to be 13 feet 4 apart. Again, most people had that. The reason we did things like cutaway views was because I can be looking at, this is locked, so I'm just going to unlock it. And the idea of this would be that if I'm working on a view, I can right click. I could do it for walls, I could do it for ceilings, but if I click the interior wall and I say select all instances visible in this view, I'm getting 36 walls, and I can see that they go from level 1, they are unconnected, and for the actual height, in there, if I was setting it at 9 feet, so if it said varied, that was an indication to me that some of them are not at 9 feet height, and I might deduct 1 point or something for that. But in general, that was a successful part of what we did. I did look to see if we had in the views, did you have at least one curved curtain wall, and did you have a curved regular wall? We had looked at ways of doing that, and rather than drafting them, it was generally easier to draw the walls to a corner and then use the wall modify and specify a curve radius and pick the 2 walls and create it. Much faster than trying to draw it, because you'd have to have a wall of the same type to get the exact connection you want. So that was 5 points, and I awarded points in there. Floor material cutouts was, for example, this was one here where I've got a carpet with showing this is what we had done for this, where we have a material that it shows you both the graphics, 12-inch tile, and the material 12-inch color sample of this, or whatever size you want it to be. Sorry, it's 2 feet in my thing, not 12 inches. Going to cut that out. I won't bother. But, so we had in the materials, we had the identity tab for what it is. We had the graphics to show what the pattern should look like. And we had the appearance to show what the actual image should look like. And we looked at how to set the sizes correctly for that. We had multiple materials, like here. Get that out. And we needed to set the thickness of the carpet and draw a sketch. So the thing here was to, if I edit that pattern was cut out, and then another material was put in that shape. And that was the idea of both making materials, and in this case materials for a floor. They could have a pattern, it could have a image, but could be cut out. And our little trick was to use reference planes, because when you picked, say, the floor material, then you don't see the pattern anymore. But the reference plane let us see what we'd be cutting out. The painted wall surfaces. So if I remember correctly, that on the second floor, and in here, right, so if I just do a temporary section here, this was this idea where you could divide up a surface, so that is like one surface, and then below that is a second surface, and you could paint with different materials on that. So for example, paint, I'll do just something highly visible so you can see it. So let me do paint violet, like that. So you could be having a surface and painting a material instead of modeling a material. The next one was doors, and the doors were really just placed where the DWG file said that they were. We're just placing this typical doors on top of it. Didn't award a lot of points for that because it was pretty straightforward. Decals. So we had the idea that we could be just temporary views again. I could be working on my camera in here. I could be looking at this as realistic. And I could create these decals. So that's the shape of the decal, which is linking back to an actual image file that you have on your machine in a specific folder. And that was something we did, and did it on curved surfaces. And I think we also showed like what you'd do if you wanted like a wall pattern painted onto a surface. The next one was rooms with schedule tagged rooms and the color scheme. I'm going to close some of these views, so I'm just going to pick the one that says level 2 and click on close the other views. So the idea was the only schedule that I really wanted was the one that would be testing rooms. And this was because of the kind of feedback that I get. So you see here, I've got a whole bunch of rooms that were created, but then deleted from the project. So the only way to get rid of these would be to actually kind of highlight them in the schedule, right click, and say delete those rows. That's taking them out. You could be renumbering in here as long as the number is unique, but you could also be doing that in the project itself. And the way to get to the rooms once they're placed was to hover over a label, hit the tab key and select, so that this information is the room number and the room name. And you can also do it in the schedules itself to change them number and name. The other thing was to have where we have the desire to put in a color scheme, which in this case would be in like a construction document view like this. This scheme identifies the rooms, and then we could, by name, there are other options that we didn't go into, but that's the beginning part of this. And then you could also be assigning colors or line types, fill patterns to make them display the way that you want. The other thing that was important was to use the labels that are reporting on the area, so that you're not just seeing like, okay, it's the room tag, but it's the room tag with area, because that's retrieving the data from the room that's in here, that's shown with the crosshairs, to report on the square footage. It is rounding it up, but it's up to you. You can set the rounding to the nearest square foot or whatever you want it to be. What's left? Ceilings at the same height. So again, the benefit of having these cutaway views would be, let's say I go to this level 2 and I go view graphics, turn everything off, and then turn on ceilings. So I can see just the ceilings, and I can either like pick them and see that I've got them all at the same height, right? Or if I want to be a little cute about it, I can lock the view, and I can use annotation and a spot elevation and do like that kind of thing. So I can see what it's. Oh, that's not clever. Oh wait, that's the second floor. Yeah, so that's the height, to make sure that they're all at the same height. And I could do there's many other ways I could do that, but I just checked that I've got all of these in your model at the same height. The other thing with the ceilings was this here, where if I create a section in here, and I look at that, you see that what I've got is these walls in here. And what I did was these walls, this is the cutaway ceiling with the lights on it. These walls, what I was doing was just kind of making a smaller wall. I could speed this up a little bit if I go to the modify tab and I say match type. So I'm saying that's correct and make that the same values. I'm doing that for the other direction as well. But basically, instead of having the walls go from the floor up, they are, if you look at the value here, it was same interior wall, but begin at level 1, but the base is up 8'3", and then it goes up another 15 inches to go to the top. I didn't care about the values, just the fact that you could divide up this ceiling to cut out the middle, and then you could use walls to make an edge to this, so that if I go to my view that was in level 1, when we get to the rendering part of this, the camera there is seeing these, right? So I could also be working in here and say that's supposed to be like that to get those to be the same. And check it out what I'm doing in 3D for this more complex geometry. There was a sloped ceiling that we did, so that was here. So if I jump in there, that would be this, and mirrored like this. So what it was in plan view, I'm going to go to ceiling plans, level 1. It was inside here that you had a slope, so you had a ceiling, but you used a slope arrow to give a bottom of ceiling and top of ceiling height. So that was 1 foot higher. And then I mirrored it to get the second. The lights and light group was a little confusing for people. It's meant to be like this. The group that you can create in the model, let me just close this for a second. So I'm just going to say just show me groups. So groups are more typically, we're going to do storage unit, or we're going to do a seating arrangement. But this was not picking these downlights like this and then saying create me a group, right? That's a name it, lighting. That's not what I was looking for. That's it's this. A light group is something slightly different. If you see, if I pick it and I go up here, it's that you can create the named collectors, if you like. So I could, let me cancel that for a second, but when I've made some of these and I call them exercise room or training room or whatever, when I do it like that, the idea is if I've got exercise room there, I can be picking the lights and I can be assigning them to whatever name is here. So you could make new ones, right? I could say something like make a new, call it something like lobby. Right, so I can make new ones that would appear on that list, but the reason I'm picking these and then from this drop list assigning what they belong to is so that I can turn them on and off in my project, so that they don't get included in calculations for rendering. So back to here, for example, when I've got a camera in here, and I can type render, and it's this here where it's saying how do you want to render? I'm only interested in it's that my camera is interior and I'm only looking at artificial lights. And then down under here, under artificial lights, this is where I'd see the group. So in effect, I could be saying, turn off any of these. These were not on the ceiling, right? These are on the ceiling. And even with them, I could say I only want to see, some of them I want turned off. That's what the light group is for. And then if I just do this as draft, so you can see it quickly. The only thing I would have to adjust is the exposure to get like adjusting the aperture on a camera to make it, let me see more light. I can adjust the exposure here to make that a little bit brighter. And I can see I'm only getting light from the lights that are switched on. So just a quick confirmation. If I do this one more time and I go to artificial lights and I say turn on all of these, there'll be more calculations. And I'll see more of the lights in my here. Let's see, get lights down here and where I didn't have them before. So that's what the light group is for, so you can switch light on and off. The stairs and railings, I have that in the entry. It was just a simple stair to go from one level to the next. It's an advanced topic. Browser cleanup. So what I meant by that is, you see these that I've been creating on the fly, is I can just say, no, these are not to be permanently in the model. That's me making kind of a generic camera view, 3D view. And the same thing with any sections that are not going to go onto the sheets. I can delete them. If I want to keep them, I would put my initials on. But I'm not renaming this like JC Level 1, JC Level 1 CD, just the sections and cameras that I'm putting in. I'm cleaning up as I go. Renderings I just showed. Render a non-perspective view. So that was, for example, I'll do it this way and just so you see it. So I'm going to go to any kind of section. And I can't, for example, typically render a plan view or a section or elevation in my model. But what I can do is I can say, give me a camera, and switch off that button that says perspective, and then come in here and say, well, if I was at that height looking down, so I'm on the second floor and I'm looking down on here, then because that is a 3D view right here, it's not a plan view, it's not an elevation view, it's a 3D. I'd probably give that a name, But the point being, if I do render again, I'll say exterior sun only. I can set the time of day, anything I want. I can render this. And I would probably want to adjust the exposure there to, so that I can be doing renderings of the interior of the building and see the materials and so on for a particular time of day or with different lighting and all the rest of it. So I only gave 1 point for having a rendered non-perspective camera. Groups I'd mentioned were down here, and more typically our groups were things like this. So that would be like a group called seating 2. And if I said edit that group and I said something like I want to add those objects to it, notice that the same group is updating through my model. Okay, maybe not a good idea there because of where else I used it, but you get the idea. It's a way to populate the model quickly with something that is repetitive through the project. So I'm going to just do a Control Z and get out there. Design options, right? So some people miss this. Under the Manage tab, I gave some points for just creating a design option. So this was typically a topic. It might be ceilings. So you could do, in the design option, you could do alternative ceilings. I wanted you to include one that says blank, that doesn't have any objects on it, so that when you're looking at the main model, you're not seeing anything in a design option. It's an advanced topic, but I gave some points just by virtue of the fact if you created a design option. Almost there. Cutaways we looked at, but also there was the enlarged areas. So that was, for example, was I'll do it down here where I've got I've got this room. And I want a blown up area of it. It would be the option to go to the view and use this callout to create a shape that you want to have at a different scale. You could also use, if it's a rectangular thing, you could also use just a scope box, but for example here, let me do one that is a sketch. Right? So for example, what I'm doing is kind of saying that area here I'll make that a little shorter. So is something I want a blow up of. So when I do that, it's going to create a view that is connected here. So I can move that. And if I click on this, it's creating a separate view that I could then document at a different scale. See, that's 1/4 inch, and the views that I had down here were typically that. But you can set the scale and have a blow up, and then have a documentation on your view. And again, I just gave one of 4 points for that. There's a wall section and interior elevation. Some people miss the interior elevations. Let me do it, for example, on the second floor. So let me simplify my model again and then go to second floor construction documentation. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is, yeah, you get default elevation markers, but you also get for the views, you get the option of using this elevation, but picking the box there that says interior elevation. So not for the building, but for the interior. Then you can place this. You can select it. So I'm going to tab to select it, and I'm going to switch on those. So what Revit is doing is creating, if I pick on this, just so you see it, it's creating interior elevations that will show me the faces of this model, and it's putting them on the browser under here, right? So I'm seeing interior elevations for this model, but I need to adjust so the width is correct, but the height is something I'm having to adjust here. So I won't do all of them, but that would be something to create multiple elevations for the inside of a room from that one symbol. And then if I don't actually need that marker, I can just delete it. And it's okay, nearly done. So scope boxes. So if I look at 3D, that, for example, is a scope box that I called palette, and then here I've got a scope box that I called project. So the idea is that if I'm looking at my model, if this thing says I'm not using, sorry, if this view says that I'm not using a scope box, then here where it says scope box palette, if it says none, and under here where it says don't crop the view, so I can select in any of multiple views that I create which part of the model I'm looking at. Right. So for example, if I was in a view called palette and I only want to see this area, that is where if I clicked on the scope box called palette, the view is also called palette. But that's how what I'm doing is limiting what I'm seeing just to what lies within that box. So like these construction documents, when I click on this view, I'm not seeing the palettes because the construction documents are using the scope box called project. I'm just seeing what's inside there. So palette like that and project like that. And if I close these, the idea would be you could actually have them both open so that as you're working, you could be saying, I'll just do it with furniture. So I'm just going to say, let's say I'm going to take a chair from here and say create similar, and then come over here and place it in my model. This is in pre-construction phase, and this is in new construction phase. So that would be a chair in new construction in my project. Okay, and so to make the palettes correctly, I just checked the one thing, which was to go to the Manage tab and to look at phases, and made a phase called pre-construction, not to be in schedules. It's what it's all about. Created it. So back to my thing here again. When I place something in here, like my floor finishes, notice that I'm creating it in the pre-construction phase so that it's not going to show up in schedules for my new construction project. And then you did the PDF, which was the sheets. and you submitted them. So we had cover sheet, plans to show the building, sections, elevations. Well, I didn't limit you. We had a customized title block. Getting the views, it's all coordinated, so any changes I just made to the model are updated in the views and therefore updated in the sheets and updated in the schedules. So back to here, when I fill those in, if I do like 5 points for this, 1 point for that, and 1 point for that, this is my percentage for that, and then I plug it into here. So if imagine you got like 78 points, then that's going to be where I get the grade from, a combination of the midterm, the final quiz, and the assessment of the model. One last thing I did just to check, I'll only do this once. I've been taking too long to do this. If I go back to my model that I've got, I can go to a camera view of any sort. So I'm going to go to like level 1. I'm going to make a camera view just to give me a starting point that's a 3D view. Let's say I was standing here looking at my model. I can go to this. So I've got Enscape, and I know a lot of people that use it. When I say start, notice here I could say just limit it to what's inside the section box. I'm only limiting the geometry to what's inside the project. This will speed it up where I get a separate window, this was updated yesterday, so this gets updated probably every 3 months. So what I did to verify the model, and the reason I added in my own model, I added some windows to borrow some light from adjacent rooms and things like that, was because I can see that the model is actually quite dark in certain areas, not enough natural light. I won't do the whole thing, but I've got 2 paths. So under here I can say I want to load a path that is my inspect downstairs, and then I'll just play it so you see it. So I'm going to be moving along that path into the building, and this is also letting me check, do I have the content that I'm expecting to see? Do I have enough head height for my stair? Did I get my patterns in? Do I have my sloped ceiling in this area with whatever lights I want to put underneath it? There's my borrowed light from adjacent rooms. I'm going towards the training room, into the training room, having a look around with there. And then similarly, I can have as many of these paths as I want. So I could also say load from a path, inspect upstairs. So upstairs, what I'm doing is in your model, I'm going from the training room out to the corridor. I'm seeing that borrowed light. I'm seeing whatever logos, whatever objects I want to have in there. It's going to take me through the corridor. It's going to take me upstairs. But the point is, I often discover modeling mistakes through being able to look at the model in 3D like this. It's kind of a check of, do I actually have modeled what I think I modeled? And it has features like automatic exposure, where it will adjust depending on how much light there is in the model. So I did one of these for each of your projects, and I'll try and put together a compilation movie that just shows some of your interiors. Okay, so I'll just cancel out. And that's it.